Hey everyone, it's Latsai with TechBB again. Today I'm going to do the Supergun show on the '09 Alien Independence. I actually thought it was a 2010 when I got it, but it's an '09. In case anybody's wondering what the differences between an '09 and '010 is, or what they are, the only real difference is here with the eye cover, and with the '09s you'll see that it's just a nice flat, straight section here. But with the 2010s, it kind of comes out and then curves up a little bit, almost like a little golf club kind of thing. So it comes out and then up a little bit, and it kind of widens out. The main reason for that, as far as I'm aware, is that the 2010s were actually 4C eye capable, whereas the 2009s and before are not. So this one's an '09. I can't put 4C eyes in it if I wanted to, but if I had a 2010 or what people call the 2011 that had all the updated parts, those ones could use 4C eyes. I believe the Invasion can also go with 4C eyes. This one can't, but it doesn't really matter because I'm not going to outshoot the gun anyway, so the 4C eyes would be completely useless for me. I'm going to probably not go in as deep with this gun as I do with some of the other guns. I want to try to save a little bit of time on this one so it doesn't end up being like an hour and a half. So I'm going to first go over a couple things, talk about the gun, and then we'll get in it. So I'm just going to start out with the barrel so I can get it out of the way. This is the Alien Mayday barrel. I'm not sure what's going to... Yeah, as you can see here, Mayday. It was their one-piece barrels. They don't come with one pieces anymore, or at least I believe the 2010 and the 2011 both came with two pieces. It's a nice short barrel. It's probably, I haven't measured it, but it's probably a 12, maybe a 14, but I think it's a 12. It's not a bad barrel. The porting's a little bit strange, as a lot of people have noticed. I thought that it would be a lot louder than it actually is because of that strange porting, but it's not so bad. It's not my disruptive, it's not some of my other barrels that I've had, but it's definitely not too bad, especially for a stock barrel. I wish it was a two-piece because then I could put it in my gat wrap, but I don't really use stock barrels anyway, so it really doesn't matter to me. I'm just going to get that out of the way. Now we'll get into the gun itself. First thing I'm going to discuss is the grips, or are the grips. When I first looked at Aliens, and I think a lot of people have the misconception when they look at Aliens, is that they have Lexan grips, and they actually don't have Lexan grips. It's possible the material that they're made out of has some Lexan in it, but I don't think that it is actually. It's just too flexible. So it's not hard plastic, it's almost like a gel coat. I don't know what else to call it, so I'm just going to call it gel coat. If I come in close in here, if you put your fingernails in it, as you can see, it leaves temporary indents that go away. I'm not sure how well that's showing up, but anyway, it's gel coated. It gives it a little bit of softness. It reminds me a lot of those raised stickers that you get. You know, kids have like those little raised stickers. They feel a lot like that. They're pretty thin. It gives the frame a nice thin look to it. It sits really nice in the hand. It's one thing I mentioned in my my first impressions review, is that I think it fits really nice in the hand. This little dip that it has right here, a lot of guns have it, but I don't know. It sits at a very good height for me with the trigger. I can get my hand all the way up in it. I'm not sure how well you can see this here, but you know, I sit very well in that section, exactly how I would have my trigger fingers. So I think that it sits really nice in the hands. I still wish that it had wraparound grips. I wish they were rubberized grips, but you know, if I'm putting these grips against some sort of panel grips or other sets of panel grips, they're actually not so bad. Bob Long, the old Bob Long panel grips were rubberized, but they had so much texture going on that I didn't like the feel of them. I thought they were a little bit harder. They rip pieces off fairly easily, so I thought that they provided pretty good grip, but I wasn't a big fan of Bob Long grips overall. but their new grips are obviously not so bad, especially since they're wraparound. So those are the grips, just trying to knock off the misconception that they are actually Lexan, because they're not. Next I'll get into the ASA, reminiscent of an Oops ASA from Planet Eclipse. One thing that I really did like with it, this ASA, is that when you spin it, let me get it upside down here, you can just spin it. It does not come off. So with a lot of ASAs, I know that my I had an Empire Nano for some time, and even my Oops ASAs, you know, when you've unscrewed it, it gets to this spot where you just have to stop, or else you'll just screw the thing off and then lose it in the dirt or whatever else. But these Alien ASAs have a little Allen key screw there. Focus. Oh, come on. There we go. So, you know, it's nice to have that little screw there so the thing doesn't come off. Just a nice little touch. It doesn't really affect anything other than I don't have to worry about where my stopping point is, because I know it's not going to come off. Screws nice and easy. It's very fluid. So, yeah, I'm not going to complain about the ASA. It doesn't gush air when you gas it up like the MacDev ASAs or the Creed ASA. So I'm actually decently happy with that for what it is. You know, I mean, it's still macro out the side, but it's not a bad ASA overall. I definitely rate it above the Oops. Next, I'll go trigger. The shaping on the trigger is actually pretty decent. I like this sort of, I get a lot of people call it the S-Class. It's very similar to the Ego type triggers, and I just think it has a really nice shaping on it. It fits really well for how my fingers sit when I'm going to be playing. You know, it's just at that spot that everything just nicely rests for me. It has a rounded face. I'm not sure. Try to flip it around here. Come on, up here. It has a nice rounded face. It does not have any sharp edges, which is my big complaint on some other triggers, such as the MacDev triggers. I think that any trigger that's made should definitely be rounded off. It feels nicer in the hands. You know, when you sit here and you kind of bring your fingers over it, you should not feel any sort of roughness or sharp edges or anything. And that's, you know, that's the way it feels. I don't feel anything on it unless you're going at the extreme sides, obviously. So I think it's a nice shaping on it. When I originally did my first impressions my first impressions review, I said that I didn't know if it was a spring-based or a magnet-based return. It is spring-based, but it's, you know, it's really, really responsive. I think it has a nice amount of resistance on it. It sits really nice. So it's not magnet return, but I don't think that it really affects that much. I'm a big fan of magnet return triggers, but I think that for a spring base, this is pretty decent. And I think probably a contributing factor to that is with most triggers, people go two ways. You know, you have the magnet return that has a magnet behind it, that you have two magnets that repel each other. So when you press this trigger in, it brings a magnet closer to the other magnet, which then gives it, you know, they want to repel each other, so it gives it more strength to actually push the trigger off. Or they put the magnets up top. So when you pull it back, the magnets are trying to attract each other, and when you let go, it sucks back up. And then guns like the Revy and stuff only have one magnet that's sucking towards the metal on the solenoid. But either way, it doesn't work like that on either side. It is spring based, but it doesn't have a spring here going out the back or up at the front. It has it right. Let me get an Allen key here so it's easier for me to point out. The spring is actually right about here. So the spring return is still behind the trigger pin, and that is what you're looking for in any sort of trigger. You don't want your push points to be in front of it. So how this works is typically in spring based you have the spring going like this. and then when you pull the trigger, it crushes the spring and then returns it. And the spring just sits here and goes back and forth like that. With the Alien trigger, it's actually a vertical up and down here. So instead of you having the long pull that gives, there's a lot of actually pull movement here, a good amount of travel here, so it has to crush down that spring a lot more. But when it's up here, it has this little, corner piece. So when you press it, the corner actually isn't moving that much in comparison to way out here because it's so much closer to the leverage point. And basically what that does is, since the spring is pushing down, it allows, probably that's why it's got so much return. I'm assuming that because it's so close to the leverage point and because it has a different angle on it, I think that might actually be why it has a much more snappy feel to it, rather than when they have the springs behind the trigger trying to push it forward. I think that it just gives it a good feel on it. It's not bouncy or anything like that. The trigger has a little bit of side-to-side play, but it's not too bad. Definitely like a critical trigger. They always say they've got no side-to-side play, but every critical trigger I've ever had some side-to-side. But it's still not bad. You definitely don't notice it when you're playing. Even when I'm sitting here like this, it's not anything that I even notice. It's only if you're holding it on each side and then wiggling it. So as far as that's concerned, I think that they did a great job on the trigger design. Could be better, obviously. Every design can be improved. It's not my favorite trigger, as most people will know. My favorite triggers were the Tecnas, but as far as the stock triggers are concerned, it goes to the Legend because of just how flared out this curve was. Anyway, moving past the trigger, I think I will go into the feed neck. As I'm sure a lot of people have noticed, it is a very, very low rise feed neck. I don't think that you could get a feed neck shorter down than that. It's basically like the old Mark feed necks, the little wedge feed necks, except for it's still lever based, which I think is awesome. The only downside is, I should have brought my Pinocchio over here. But anyway, when you bring the Pinocchio in, you only get about a 1/4 inch. You're not going to get the Pinocchio in very deep before that battery tray actually, starts to smack into the pin. So that's a little bit disconcerting when I'm playing. I haven't had any issues. I played with it 2 days now with the Pinocchio, and then one with the rotor. I had no issues other than the rotor jamming all the time, but I had no issues with the rotor being in the way. But with the Pinocchio, that battery tray just comes down so far that it becomes problematic. So if you have a Pinocchio, I definitely take that into consideration, but I never had a problem. My Pinocchio never started wiggling, it didn't start going to the sides or anything like that. It held a very good grip. My only sort of complaint with the feed neck on this is a lot of these lever locking feed necks, you can kind of swivel using the lever to actually tighten it up or loosen it. That is not possible with the Alien. As you can see here, it's just too tight in there. So you have to adjust it through the Allen key. It's not a big deal. You're going to do it once per loader. Each time you switch a loader, obviously. So it's not a huge deal, but I still just like being able to adjust it on the fly without having to have my keys with me. Next, I'll go into... Let's just start breaking down the gun. I'll start with the LPR. Now, the LPR is similar in a way to a lot of the LPRs that you're going to see, but slightly different as well. So, in here is just the LPR housing left. There are some things that you can maintain in there, an O-ring and stuff like that. Typically, and this is just a general rule of thumb for all markers that I've ever had. If it has an LPR that comes out the front like this, it's not like a DM where you actually have to take out the entire thing. But if it's external LPR, I never take out the LPR housing unless I'm having problems. I don't see any reason to open up that housing. The only thing that I maintain out of my LPRs is the actual LPR section that comes out. I don't want to go in through the HPR, take out the set screw, and then pull out the whole thing. There's not a lot going on in there. So unless I need to get to my poppet valve, or I'm having some sort of sealing problem there, I don't go into it. So pull the piston and the spring out, and this is the part that's a little bit different than some other guns, is it actually has two springs. So it has this shorter spring, which goes inside the LPR, and then it has the longer spring that goes along the shaft of the piston. So the piston has a little, man, I'm blanking out on what those things are called. Yeah, it's a little rubberized kind of cushion thing that, oh man, I can't believe I forgot the name of these things. I had a bunch of problems with my Hyper 3s. Yeah, anyway, the regulator seat, there you go, god damn. Anyway, so that's the regulator seat, sits there on the tip of the of the piston, and it's got the one single O-ring that you need to worry about on that. But with your LPRs on the Alien, you also have a little disc in there, wrong size as usual. So you need to take out the adjustment screw, and then you just kind of push that out. So you got this little disc that also has an O-ring on it. It's just a flat disc. So that's the entire LPR. As you can see, the housing is empty now. This is a pretty simple LPR. I love spring-based things. Obviously, shims can be problematic. I'm just going to quickly add a little bit of lube. It has not been that long since I've actually cleaned this thing out, so I'm not going to clean it. Typically I take a rag, just wipe it off, check the O-rings and all that, but I'm just going to quickly rub on some since I can feel on my hands I have already rubbed some off. So you have the long spring. Always remember, it's the long spring that goes onto that shaft. If you mix up these springs, you're going to end up with issues. I'm going to take the little disc, a little lube. I'm using Militia lube. You could use any Dow 33 based lube. A lot of people use Dow 55 on their regulators. Unless I'm having issues, I wouldn't do that. Dow 33 always works perfectly for me. I don't see any reason to use Dow 55. I don't want to swell O-rings and cause possible problems. Let me just go over this again. When you're going to get the disc in there, mine and probably any one that's been used, when you see that circular cut section, that's actually from this adjustment screw. You know, when it comes down, as you can see the face on that adjustment screw, when it comes down on there, god damn it, when that comes down on there, it kind of cuts in. It doesn't affect performance or anything like that. I would not worry about it. So basically, you're just going to drop it in. It's not going to land nicely. Take an Allen key, and if I get in here, yeah. So you can see it's usually going to land like that. That's the wrong side because actually I don't think you can call it the wrong side because I'm sure both sides work. But I like to keep using the same damaged side. So just use the Allen key to flip her over. Crap, I'm dropping everything today. Fix the camera here. Drop that thing in there. Spin it the right direction and then just kind of press it in. Make sure that you've pressed it all the way in, because the place that it's going to hook up at is here. So you want to just kind of, you know, jam it the rest of the way in there. So when it's in, you're going to take this nice little short spring and just drop that in there. it doesn't really attach to anything, it just sits on it. So then you take the piston, stick it in with the disc section first. So the LPR should now look like this. Stick that in your gun. And screw her on there. Now with your adjustment screw, a lot of guns I count the spins and all that, but I plan to retune this thing today anyway, so it's not a big deal. With the Alien, I just start at flush before I start tuning. So crank that down. So just get the LPR screw flush there. That's a good starting point for you to start tuning it. Or if you don't plan on tuning it, just put it flush and go and shoot. But you can definitely adjust it more from flush, especially as it starts to break in. So that's the LPR. Go ahead and get in the HBR. Come on. Other one. Let me get the grease off my hands here. There we go. So this is the Alien Air Force regulator. And it's a two-piece body. I prefer HPRs that are actually three pieces, that you have a completely separate bottom, because when we get into this thing I'll show you why it's a little bit of a pain, because it's a two-piece. But for general maintenance it's not going to matter. Full strip or troubleshooting, it could matter.